Attention Seattle, Washington listeners, or anyone that might be in the Seattle area on February 1st, we will be joining author Mitzi Soretto at the Elliott Bay Book Company for her book, The Best New True Crime Stories, Serial Killers. So be sure to follow us on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all of the social medias. We'll let you know exact time and place that you could swing by and meet us, and also meet Mitzi Soretto.
There are nearly 20,000 murders annually in the United States.
Perhaps it's the weather, but the Pacific Northwest has become the notorious home of serial killers and bizarre crimes.
We're here to discuss those murders,
To try to understand the motives,
respect and remember the victims.
and explore the humanity of it all.
I'm Emily Rowney.
And I'm Alisha Holland.
And this is Murder in the Rain.
That was the song Sign of the Crab by the punk band The Gits. The eerie lyrics you just heard were, "Never ceases to amaze me the things you try to pull. Anything to get me in and then get me killed. Go ahead and slice me up, spread me all across this town, 'cause you know you're the one that won't be found." These words haunt those that knew, loved, performed with, and were fans of the immensely talented Mia Zapata, a woman whose rising star would be, like her song, killed and spread across town. Little did she know just how accurate the line, "You know you're the one that won't be found," would be. And for more than a decade, her killer was not found. From her groundbreaking music to the groundbreaking science behind her case, Mia's effect will continue to rattle through the veins of punk kids, rocker chicks, Pacific Northwesterners, and victims of violence for years to come. Born in Kentucky on August 25th, 1965, Mia Catherine Zapata was a cherished daughter, sister, artist, friend, and Git. Eventually moving to Ohio for school, it was there in 1986 that she met Matt Dresdner, a bass player that was also attending the liberal arts Antioch College. While she wasn't one to crave the spotlight, so much so that her father called her ultra shy and the last one to draw attention to herself, she had emotions to share and found joy in expressing those intense feelings through music. While shy, she was known by classmates as having an intense, quiet energy, the kind that commanded a room and respect. It is believed that her family was actually related to Emiliano Zapata, the Mexican revolutionist, and that through her blood and genes, she maybe acquired some of that leadership and fearlessness. The power of her presence was not easily forgotten. The first time her future bandmate heard her, while she drunkenly stood atop a table at a house party and belted out the blues, he cried. While her presence demanded respect, she was not exactly intimidating. Mia was very skinny, had double-jointed elbows, like someone else, and she would frequently stand with her knees together, earning her the nickname of Chicken. In a nutshell, a friend called her a chicken woman with a lot of heart. The chicken reference stuck, so much so that Mia eventually got a tattoo of a chicken on her leg. She owned her foulness. Thank you. There was something to her energy, her star power, what she evoked through her lyrics and voice. She was a standout in the local music scene. Her powerful voice, sincerity, and raw emotion was what grabbed most people that were witness to her gift. In 1989, after meeting Matt, he brought her along to meet the other guys he had been jamming with, Andy Kessler and Steve Moriarty, and created a band, The Gits. Gits being the shortened version of their original name, which was the Sniveling Little Rat-Faced Gits, a line taken from a Monty Python sketch. Breaking it down to the bare bones and the most important part of the phrase, they went with The Gits, which also means basically the nerds, the losers, squares. You get the idea. As the Gits jammed and started to learn about and teach themselves the art of punk, they brought the punk scene to the Midwest. It didn't take long for word to spread around the campus that there was a new band in town that was making a name for themselves. The Gits started to play shows all around town and soon felt they had outgrown the area. Wanting to be as far from the East Coast as possible and hearing that there was a budding music scene starting to grow on the West Coast, the band, not all yet graduated, made their way to Seattle, where even among the misfits, they were still misfits. Their sound, while heavy and dabbling in what would eventually become the grunge sound, had its own tone and expression, mostly in part to Mia's words and delivery. It was blues-infused punk, not to mention they had a chick lead singer in a world of rock and roll men. Starting out in different apartments, they soon found and shared a home. It would be known to those in the scene as the Rat House at 19th and Denny. There they lived and breathed their music. If they weren't in their own rooms writing music, they were in the basement practice space. Soon, after quickly becoming friends with fellow musicians in the area, the Rat House became the go-to place for house parties that would be host to performances by all of the local bands. When the Gits weren't in the practice space, bands like 7 Year Bitch were, learning and honing their crafts. While nervous to be starting out while in the presence of someone they so admired, Mia was nothing but supportive and encouraging. You needed an instrument? Use hers. You need a space to stay, practice, work out your music? Her door was open. The band was starting to come together in their sound. The guys would dick around, come up with some riffs, and then work on a song. When they had it down, they would invite Mia to come listen. She would record it, take the music to her room where she would write or go through her journals for inspiration. Then, a few days later, she would come back, have them play the song again, and she would wrap it in a bow of her lyrics. During this time, Mia kept her day job as a server at the Frontier Room, a local dive bar that had no problem with her tattoos, dreadlocks, or overall badass punkness. Then, the band got their first gig at the Vogue, home to all of the punk shows. Those that were lucky enough to be at the first show knew they were witnessing something special. That Mia's voice combined with the band's sound was not like anything else that was out at the time. It didn't take long for the band to decide to have more than just their foot in the door of the music scene. They wanted to record, and they wanted to do it on their own terms. So they got some of their musician friends together and made a compilation album, sort of a best of for the Seattle punk scene of the early 90s. After the compilation album, the fandom surrounding the Gits started to grow more and more. Their following began to carry them to bigger venues and talks of touring. And although they were viewed as, by again default of being in the Seattle area, as part of the grunge scene, they didn't see themselves as grunge. They were punk, and that was that. Their chemistry on stage was palpable. Always interacting and making jokes, you could see that there was a real and deep love there. Although not considered part of the grunge scene, their timing in coming to Seattle could not have been more perfect. Because of the buzz about Seattle and the music coming out of it, they were getting attention that otherwise might have taken them years to get. At one point, a filmmaker came to town to make the documentary Hype, and they featured the Gits. They started to do shows in town and eventually opened for and shared stages with bands that would become larger than life: Sublime, Soundgarden, Beck, Green Day, and Nirvana. After the compilation album, the Gits released a single, Second Skin. It was catchy and became a bit of a hit for the band. Mia even got to go to a Tower Records with her dad, where she begged of him to not make a scene and not embarrass her, although he did the total dad thing and had to go grab and get the record and point it out and go, "Isn't this yours?"
That's cute.
She was mortified, so they left. Riding the wave of popularity that their fellow Pacific Northwest bands and the Second Skin single provided, they set up a European tour, which was a great success, as anyone that was making music from Seattle might as well have been Elvis at that time. Then, in '93, they took a huge step in the direction of success. Atlantic Records offered them a deal. Sitting with the contract in front of them, the label asked what they wanted, what their long-term goals were. Mia's were simple. She wanted a cabin in the woods, a sheepdog, a Jeep, and to be able to sit and write her music. They were still waiting on finalization of the contract when they planned their first nationwide tour. The Gits were moments away from blowing up and forever forging their names in the annals of music history. It was now early July of 1993. Not only was Mia back from a tour, but she had just been paid for her first solo performance, and she was elated. Recently returning from L.A., she went out to have some drinks and catch up with friends the night of July 6th at the Comet Bar in Seattle's Capitol Hill area. Drinking and laughing, it was noted just how jovial and excited about the future Mia was. Everything she had been working for during the last 4+ years was all coming to fruition. It was around 1 a.m. on what now was July 7th when Mia left the bar and went across the street. At the apartment building that she was walking to, there was also a basement studio. According to court documents, she was looking to find Robert Jenkins, her recent ex-boyfriend. It's claimed that while looking for him and subsequently not finding him, she became rather heated. Not finding Robert there, she continued upstairs to the apartment of her friend, who went by the name TV. A little drunk and a lot annoyed that she couldn't find Robert, she hung with TV, drank a beer or two, and expressed her anger towards Robert having a new girlfriend. Around 2 a.m., Mia left TV's place, saying she was getting a cab from the station across the street and going home. That would be the last time anyone would see her alive. An hour and a half later, a woman was walking down the dead-end street of 24th Avenue South between South Yesler and South Washington, only about a mile and a half from the Comet Bar, when she saw, lying in the middle of the street, face up and arms spread wide, an unresponsive body of a young woman. She ran across the street to the fire station, and paramedics ran to Mia's aid. A call to 911 was made, and police arrived, and although they attempted resuscitation efforts, nothing could be done. Mia Zapata joined alongside other powerful, talented young women with blues in their soul, just like Janis Joplin and Amy Winehouse, to become yet another musician inducted into the 27 Club. It wasn't until the next morning when her band/housemates were worried about her not coming home that they started to make some calls. They had recently lost other friends to drug overdoses, and while that wouldn't have been the case as Mia was not known to use, they couldn't understand why she had done, as her name, gone missing in action. Eventually, they called the morgue, and it was then that they were informed that there was in fact an unidentified body that had been brought in that night. It was her chicken tattoo on her leg that was used to identify her body. Investigators were left with many questions. What happened to Mia, and who did she encounter in that hour and a half that cost her her life? A man that lived near the area had heard a horrific scream the night of her murder. He even walked outside to see where it was coming from, but he didn't see anything. That was pretty much the extent of the evidence that the police were left to work with. The community and Mia's bandmates were all beyond devastated. Not only did they lose their bandmate, but for many, a dear friend. On top of that, she was an artist that was just coming into her own, an artist that had so much more to give the world. After her death, the whole scene shifted. Knowing that, statistically speaking, the odds were that the person that did this to Mia knew her, all eyes started to point to the men that were around. Female performers didn't feel safe sitting with their friends. Who knew if the man that they considered a close friend, was actually a psycho killer? Adding fuel to the paranoia was the fact that police brought in so many of the male musicians for questioning and saliva samples. Sure, they were doing that for elimination purposes, but to even be questioned cast a light of doubt on everyone. This led to broken friendships, broken up bands, and a heartbroken community. It was found upon autopsy that Mia had been strangled with a ligature. That ligature is assumed to have been the drawstring of her own Gits sweatshirt. But that wasn't the extent of the trauma and horror that she experienced before dying. She was violently beaten and raped. With her sweatshirt pulled up to her armpits, her hood was tied tightly around her face and knotted under her throat. Vaginal and anal injuries were found, which were consistent with rape. She suffered external abrasions, including what looked to be potential bites around her nipples. She had injuries to her internal organs, and while the court complaint doesn't specifically note what those injuries were, I can only infer that those were probably bruises or something similar from being beaten, attacked, and defending herself. Her underwear, wallet, and torn bra were stuffed into the pocket of her jeans. This was a violent attack in the middle of the night on a dead-end street. Mia was known for taking cabs, as she was equally known for her inability to drive. She would frequently borrow friends' cars and go on drives, but they weren't known for being pleasant or effective. This led to her taking cabs everywhere, so much so that she was friendly with a handful of drivers. One in particular, Scott McFarland, claimed to have had a relationship with Mia. About a year after the murder, it's claimed that McFarland made some self-incriminating statements. Police started their investigation with cabbies. Who had picked her up, and were they perhaps potential suspects? In the ensuing investigation, it was found that Mia never got into a cab that night, and there was no evidence pointing to Scott McFarland. So, how about the ex-boyfriend? According to court documents, a friend of Mia's claimed that they had a bit of a tumultuous relationship, and he had even, quote, gone crazy on her a couple of times. Not only that, Mia was in a rage that night while looking for him. She could have maybe run into him out on the street, they got into an argument, and the next thing you know, things have gone too far. It seemed like a good possibility. However, there was no evidence connecting Robert to the murder. He even called the rat house the next morning trying to find her. Although there had clearly been a rape, there was no semen to take samples of. However, from the bites on her breast, there was saliva. Unfortunately, this was in 1993, and there wasn't much that could be done with saliva. DNA was just beginning to be allowed in the courts, and technology for saliva testing wasn't even developed. Then it got quiet. The police weren't talking to anyone, no matter how much Mia's friends and family wanted to know. So in August, her band took it upon themselves to hire a private investigator, but it wasn't going to be cheap. So they called in the troops. Joan Jett took Mia's place for the night with the Gits, forming Evil Stig, or Gits Live, backwards. Along with Joan, they were joined by the Posies, Presidents of the United States of America, Eddie Vedder, Soundgarden, and Nirvana. Former practice space sharers and close friends of the band 7-Year Bitch released the song M.I.A.
Who do you suspect? Who is not afraid to die? Who would tell such a lie? Who runs away? Who do we fear?
All in all, the fundraisers raised about $50,000 for the private eye. That $50,000 got them squat. No names, no leads, no clues. Hopelessness was starting to take over. Soon a year had passed since Mia's brutal death. Then 2. Then 10. Finally, in 2004, 11 years after Mia's murder, a film crew was making the documentary The Gits, focusing on their music and the importance to the music scene and their continuing influence. While making the movie, and obviously touching on Mia's death, everything changed. Most importantly, technology had changed. Technology allowing for the testing of DNA from saliva samples. The Washington State Police ran the DNA from the saliva, and they got a hit. Jesus Mosquiz in Marathon, Florida. He had just been charged with a felony, therefore his DNA was on file. It was a match. Miami police charged him with Mia's murder, and he was held in their custody until he was extradited to Washington. Once in Washington, a second test was run with the saliva, and it was also a match, as was the blood test. Detective Richard Gangon, who had been working the case, happily made the call to Mia's father, who profusely thanked him for catching the monster that did this to his daughter. Once in Washington, Jesus was quickly charged and a trial was underway. When Jesus's picture was across the papers of the Seattle area, a local woman, Valentina Dieko, claimed that 6 months after Mia's death, she was out on a jog at 4:30 a.m. when Jesus approached her. He quickly knocked her to her knees, and as she started to process the situation, she began to feel pain on her throat. She was lucky, though, and she was able to get up and make a run for it. She later returned home and saw the same man standing at the corner of her building, watching her and masturbating.
Sick.
Very. She didn't report it until he was already on trial and the state had rested their case. From the court documents I found, she did not testify, and to the best of my knowledge, charges were never filed in regards to her incident with Jesus. So, who was this monster of the night that had haunted the Seattle area for over a decade? Jesus Mosquiz came to America from Cuba in the 1980s. He had lived in California and Florida, making a living in construction. He was married and had at least one child. He also has a criminal history, including possession of burglary tools and aggravated assault on a pregnant woman.
Oh, nice.
The charge that he was arrested for in Florida is not listed, but it was a felony. But I was researching and was not able to find what it was, so I don't know if maybe they did a trade, like we'll drop this if you go to Washington. I don't know. Jesus's presence also commanded a room, but not in a way Mia's did, but in an evil way. One officer said it felt like the room would get colder by 10 degrees when Jesus entered it. And Jesus is a very tall, broad-shouldered man who had the hands that, quote, looked like baseball gloves, according to one of the detectives. In the early 90s, at 39 years old, he actually did live in the Seattle area, placing him in the city at the time of Mia's death. The King County Courthouse was full of friends and family of Mia's, there to support her and see that justice was brought to her. On March 25, 2004, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict of guilty. In sentencing, the judge added an extra 10 years to the usual sentence for 36 years total. It is Detective Richard Gangan's theory that Jesus was out that night with one thing on his mind: to find, rape, and murder a woman. It just so happened that Mia crossed paths with him while he was on the hunt. Unfortunately, that wouldn't be the last we would hear from old Jesus. In August of 2005, he filed an appeal, not stating that he was innocent, but stating that there were more options of suspects, like the cabbie and the boyfriend, both of which he was unable to present any evidence for, and it was pretty clear that after the decade of investigating, the police had cleared both men as suspects.
Do you know what his argument for his saliva being present would be then?
I'm about to talk about some DNA, baby.
Oh, girl.
He also complained that his DNA was taken illegally, although the case regarding that argument had already been heard by the Supreme Court. His complaint went on that Washington and Florida were actually working together illegally, that he wasn't allowed enough of a defense, and blah, blah, blah. So no, he didn't say like, I can't explain why my saliva. It was all, but look at all these other options, therefore I should get a new trial. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. We actually will have the link to that appeal if you can stomach reading all of his complaining and
Bullshit.
the waste of money and time by this scumbag. Luckily, the appeal was denied, and he continues to serve his sentence. Mia is buried in Louisville, Kentucky. At her funeral, her father marveled at the line going down the block of people that loved his daughter. Her casket was filled with notes, jewelry, and other trinkets that those that adored her wanted her to have. Mia lives on in photos, videos, and her music, and judicial history, as hers was the first murder case solved with saliva DNA. She also lives on in the form of Home Alive, a nonprofit self-defense group organized by her fellow musicians that realized that this happened to Mia not because she was a strong, badass chick, which she was, but because she was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it could have been any of them. They just want to be able to go to the bar with friends, have some drinks, walk home at 2 a.m. without worrying about becoming another victim. So they established Home Alive. We're joined now by Zoe and Stefanie, who worked with the Home Alive organization, and they're going to speak to us about its history and what you can continue to learn from it today. Hello.
Hi, is this Alisha?
It is.
So my name is Zoe Burnett, and I was one of the founding members of Home Alive. I was 23 in 1993. I didn't know Mia personally. She was a friend of friends. I'd seen her perform several times, and completely blown away by her presence. Her style, her originality. She was definitely a force. And I was working down at the Pike Place Market in 93, and a couple of people from 7 Year Bitch also worked in the market, and people who were associated with that scene. Somebody came by and told me what had happened, that Mia was murdered, and she told me, actually, it was Maria Mabra. She wasn't in 7 Year Bitch, but she was another musician. She told me what happened, and she said, there's going to be a meeting at Val's house. Val was the drummer for 7 Year Bitch. It's going to be a meeting. People are just going to get together to talk about what to do, how to respond. And I went to this meeting, and there was a packed room. I mean, it's maybe 20, 25 people there. It wasn't that original meeting was not just women. It was some mixed gender, and very early on, the idea came up to teach ourselves self-defense, because we did feel like if it could happen to Mia,
Right.
because Mia was so tough, she was also very tender, under that toughness, but she at least, carried herself in this way that felt very tough and confident. And we knew that she would have fought back, but, we thought, well, maybe if she had more skills,
if she had more tools for that moment, that it could have been different.
more tools. Exactly. So we organized the class originally for ourselves. There was one person in the crowd, Christian Storm, who had some self-defense background and teaching background, but the rest of us had never taken a class before, I don't think. So we got trained, and then it was just very grassroots. We just said, you know what, self-defense classes are expensive. Not everybody can afford them. And, we can't afford to take a lot of classes, but we're just gonna just do it. We'll just take the tools that we have, the skills that we're learning, and just share them. Very, very grassroots.
Yeah, that's impressive organization of, instead of anyone, you guys weren't sitting around waiting going, okay, who's going to help us? Who's going to help make this change? It was like, no, we're going to make this change, and we're going to put it together and make this happen for us.
Yeah, because it came out of that DIY punk scene. That was the attitude. There was no, oh, somebody else is going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it for ourselves, but we're going to do it for the larger community, because we are all. There was this sense of vulnerability, that everybody was feeling, and a lot of our community was about going out to see live music and being out late at night. So we wanted to restore some of that, I think, sense of safety through that. Yeah, and it was rooted in the music and arts community. That was where the support came from. That's how we were able to offer the classes for free, was doing all the fundraisers that we did, and the CDs. Of course, the first CD in particular generated a lot of attention and funds for us, and that's how we were able to keep going for so long. We were organized as a collective, but we did make the decision to become a nonprofit. And I'm not 100% sure about this, but because it was so long ago now.
Right.
But I think that part of the reason was because we were wanting to do that CD, and we needed to be a nonprofit to, have that kind of money and to be able to accept donations. But it was always a struggle between wanting to be very grassroots and collective and non-hierarchical.
Right. And plus you're talking about a bunch of very young, starving artists, so it's not like you're starting with a huge financial base to begin with. So that would be, quite the road ahead. But
yeah, young, but very, very resourced, maybe not financially resourced, but very resourced in other ways. And then, I don't know if you've seen the first CD, the double CD that was released on Sony Records. That CD in particular had a lot of well-known names on it. Joan Jett and Nirvana donated a track. That was after Kurt's death.
yeah.
Yeah,
I did
Nancy
speak
Wilson
on the live show fundraiser, and the Stieg. I've got it backwards. Evil Stieg. And yeah, so that's really an impressive start, to just see the problem and then do something about it on your own terms. And even now to have it accessible to anyone that would need it. I mean, everyone should be looking at this, because it's just right here and so well done.
I think it was 2010 when we dissolved as a nonprofit. We no longer have a studio. We no longer have staff. We basically have no infrastructure at this point. It was a really hard decision to make at the time in 2010 when the remaining instructors and the board of directors made that decision. And in retrospect, I think maybe some decisions were made that I wasn't very happy with, but like what happened. And so there are not really ways to plug in or donate. The way that we do still exist, however, is in the context of in 2010, when we made the decision to dissolve as a nonprofit, the remaining instructors at the time, we archived our curriculum. We wrote everything down that we could think of, and we archived it on a website. And that website is called teachhomealive.org. And you can read about our history. You can read about the principles under which we teach our classes or taught our classes. You can see some resources. You can go through our curriculum. And you can, by reading our curriculum, if you are a skilled facilitator, or if you want to start learning how to facilitate, like this exists so that anyone can have access to the resources of teaching self-defense classes.
Yeah. Emily and I were actually looking through some of them. They are very well written and easy to do, and you really can kind of just do them almost like at home with a friend to just practice some of those moves.
That's fantastic feedback to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, no, they're great.
Yeah.
I work in a very high physical job in a mental health facility, and so some of them where it's like deflecting a hug, I'm like, I'm gonna borrow that one.
Yeah, totally. So
yeah, but we just wanted to let you know that like it's not an organization that's very active.
Yeah,
it still exists, but it's really not that active. So if that's the story that you're wanting to tell, is like,
no, that's totally understandable. And the fact that you guys still have your website and you have everything out there for free for everyone speaks volumes about, how sincere you were about creating this, and, that it matters. And it's not about, oh yeah, we're going to teach classes for $100. It's no, we want to keep everyone safe. Like that's the purpose of it.
If there's one thing I've learned as an adult, it's that life can be hard. Whether you're dealing with stress and anxiety, trauma, or mourning the loss of a loved one, it could be helpful to talk to someone about what's going on in your life.
Going to a doctor's office to meet with someone weekly can disrupt your schedule and can be so expensive. Why not make a choice to try something convenient and affordable? Try BetterHelp.
With BetterHelp, you can get help on your own time and at your own pace. Scheduling a session with your counselor is easy and can be done via chat, text, phone, or even a video session to talk face-to-face.
BetterHelp has over 3,000 counselors who are licensed professionals with expertise in multiple topics. You can select what matters to you and be matched up with a counselor that fits your needs.
Listen, we all have something we're going through, so why not get started with BetterHelp today? To make it even more affordable, Murder in the Rain listeners get 10% off their first month with discount code RAIN.
Go to betterhelp.com/rain to fill out a questionnaire to help you get matched with a counselor that you'll love. That's betterhelp.com/rain, RAIN. BetterHelp, because you deserve to be happy.
Do you guys know about the Mariella boat lift part of the story?
I do not.
I mean, it's something I look into. Apparently, Jesus was on, I think it's Mariella. I might be saying it wrong, but he was on one of the Mariella boat lifts from Cuba when Castro emptied the prisons and sent this psychopaths over here. So I looked into it because that's the story I've heard, but I
did not. Yeah, I got a lot of
100%
information
confirmed.
from his, from appeal and court documents and things of that, but I did not come across that information. So we will definitely look into that.
Yeah, it's just something that I've heard, and
it wouldn't be surprising given
you can confirm that.
Yeah, given his history in Florida and stuff, the other charges he had, I would not be surprised if that was the case.
Yeah.
Everyone should go to teachhomealive.org and look at this curriculum and history about this to, bring this more to life. And I really appreciate your time on this Saturday morning.
Yeah, thank you for reaching out.
Great. Well, thank you so much and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you
so much.
too.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
That I was dead. Had a dream last night that I was dead. Evil spirits all around my bed.
At the time, there was nothing like the Gits, and there really hasn't been anything like them since. I'm sure through my punk phase and growing up in Portland, I've come across them before, but I never really paid attention. Listening to her voice now and getting into their catalog for this story, it's really incredible. She had a depth and power that, should she have been in a different place that night and not crossed paths with this predator, she would still be singing and blowing minds to this day. In 2005, it was pretty clear her bandmates were still struggling with the loss of Mia, how close they were to making it, how much she was growing into her words and voice. They completed and released the Gits' second album, called Enter the Conquering Chicken, and they continued to play music as the dancing French liberals of 48. Eventually, they all went their separate ways, but no matter where they go, they'll always be a Git, just like Mia. For more information on the Gits, or just to be able to listen to their music, check any streaming service and listen to them. They're really pretty amazing. Her voice is outstanding.
Do you think he just loitered around watching women? Do you think he followed that girl who was jogging? Like,
Yeah, and it was because so I got her information of that incident from his appeal.
okay.
But it wasn't his, it was appeal, and it was through a court document. So it had and I'm not a lawyer, so I deciphered it as best I could. But yeah, it didn't say like she ran and then she's like, I'm just going to keep jogging. Like, I'm unfazed by that, or I'm in shock, so I'm just going to run it off.
She probably
And
just
then
ran home.
well, but then like it was her building. So like, it's not like she ran down the block, I wouldn't think. And then like went and he's just there. But,
It makes me feel like he knew
something
her.
like maybe stalking, or
Watch.
like, oh, I know you leave at 4:30.
Yeah.
And we know why he's specifically waiting till the middle of the night, because
Right.
that's when it's like, oh, you're maybe drunk from the bar, or you're not expecting it
Easier
because you're just
victim.
going for a jog. Like,
Mm.
yeah, so super gross. It's a shame she didn't call the police right then, but understand, it's like, what do you say? Like,
Well, a
you
lot
know.
of times nothing happens because
Exactly.
the assault didn't go any further.
Exactly. This guy sort of did something like, yeah, I'm sure they would have been
Yeah.
dismissive of it. And so, yeah, it's a bummer that that's how that's perceived,
I
because
wonder
then people
how often
don't.
that may have happened.
Yeah. How many other times that people just like didn't see his face when it happened, so they didn't recognize him on the papers or whatever,
Mhm.
where you're just like, oh, the police won't do anything, so I'm
He's
not going to
creepy.
bother.
He's creepy looking too.
He's very creepy looking. Yeah. And
We'll have a picture for
yeah.
you.
And just, the whole thing, like with the officer saying, that his hands were like baseball gloves. And it's like, that's so gross. Even though it was a ligature that was used to kill her, it's like, I'm sure he was, maybe grabbing her neck. And that could have been like the internal injuries and stuff. And it's just
Yeah.
like this huge dude that literally is just on the prowl, out on the
Gross.
hunt, looking for somebody.
Yeah, it could have been anybody.
And that was the thing too, of just like, the documentary is really great. It's 80 minutes long. Like, if you can binge a show, you can sit and watch this documentary. It's on Amazon. And to see so many badass musicians from Seattle, and just talking like, our friend was tortured, and that's awful. And also like, we just want to be able to go out. Like,
Mhm.
we should not feel scared in our own neighborhood to just go have some beers and walk
Well,
home.
especially when it goes unsolved for so long.
Yeah.
It really could be anybody.
Mm-hmm. And, is the person still here? Did they get arrested? Are they dead? Like, you have no idea.
Mhm.
And they're just around.
Yikes.
So check out teachhomealive.org for more information of how you can take some self-defense classes, get some self-defense education, or donate.
Or bond with people in your own area.
Exactly. Maybe teach a class. Maybe you know some self-defense.
Yeah. Okay, so I looked up what Zoe had mentioned about the M.I.A boat.
Yes.
So it came over in 1980. And do you guys have any idea about the history of this?
I do not.
Okay, so basically, a boat came from Cuba. A lot of Cubans wanted to relocate, and they were fighting over the ability to get onto this boat. So what happens is, what's his name? Fidel Castro?
Fidel Castro. What's his name? That guy.
He is like, okay, it's like some people are average people who want to relocate. Then he puts mentally ill people on it, and then he puts a ton of violent convicts on it because he wants to create chaos. And he sends them over.
And what was the nature of this boat? Were they like, by the way, we're deciding to just send one boatload?
Yeah. So anyway, this guy was on it in 1980. That's how he immigrated to America. Now, we don't know yet.
Which, if he was even on, like...
I don't know if he was one of the convicts or what.
But odds are.
I'm looking into it. But I'm trying to calculate his age really quick. So he was an adult.
No, that's when he came, was 1980.
Yeah, so he was an adult.
Because he was 39 and 93. I have a feeling
there is a good chance he was one of those
So
criminals.
He would have been... what's 39 minus 80 divided by 12?
I don't do math on this show anymore.
Forget that.
Emily shamed me.
No, he would have been like...
oh my God.
He would have been like 26.
It was light shaming.
It was.
So I wanted to just detail a couple of things I found while looking this up.
Yes.
Now, we talked about the DNA of the saliva matching. So just a little bit more information on this Jesus guy. So the profile was extracted from the saliva found on her body, and it was kept in cold storage because they didn't have the technology yet. Well, they later did develop it. So the original entry in 2001 failed to have a result. So they compare that to CODIS, right? Well, not long after, this Jesus guy does get busted for domestic abuse. And so they put it in the system in 2002.
And then when they ran it again.
Yeah, because he had this history of violence, burglary, assault, battery.
Yeah.
His ex-girlfriend and his wife all had reports against him.
Yeah.
And then, not long after the murder, 2 weeks after Mia's murder, he gets busted for indecent exposure.
Just like the girl that was going to be 6 months later.
Yep. So he clearly did that frequently.
And this was all, like, he... like I'm of course you found this in 2 seconds as I'm like spending hours trying to find his record and
I'm one of those puzzle clickers. I click on things, I found it.
I don't. I just go off the first thing, go, oh, what's it here?
Wikipedia.org. I donate.
Yeah, all
so
my
I
stories,
feel like
all my stories are straight from Wikipedia. I want to keep it as legit as possible.
I just was clicking from a lot of random articles.
But I mean, again, this is all just speculation, but it's like, if you have this pattern, which, you know, like I had said too, of like, he arrested for this and battery of, you know, a pregnant woman and all these things. And then the woman coming forward saying that happened. So it's such a pattern that like, you're going to have a hard time convincing me that started once he came to America.
Absolutely.
And wasn't happening when he was 26 years old in Cuba and he wasn't committing, you know, violent crimes.
This guy clearly, I think it's a very high likelihood he was being
wild.
shipped here.
I knew nothing about this boat. I don't know how the girls knew it because I was like, I'm reading through on this guy and there was never
I did see a note in a one of the footers on Wikipedia, but it didn't have links or anything. It was just a casual reference. And that's where I started. So the other thing that the ladies were talking about, how this can happen to anyone and how, yes, most often this violence happens between known individuals. I don't recall if you said this or not, but yes, it was the middle of the night. Mia was walking. She actually had headphones in too, under her hoodie. So, I mean, it really was like the perfect victim for him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he could just creep up behind her.
Well,
that's
like what
scary.
That's what experts say. I sat through a horrible training a couple weeks ago, but one of the only decent points he made was like, if I'm looking to attack someone, am I going after the person that has their head up and they're like
looking around
and paying attention, or am I going after the person with the hoodie and the headphones and the looking down at their phone? And
it's just really scary to imagine. What did she even know that was happening? Because, you know,
by
he
the time
tied that around her neck, and so her hoodie was covering most of her face.
Yeah,
she may not have seen anything. Just blindly fighting for her life. It's very, very scary.
Yeah, no, and I think that was a great point they brought up of just like having the context
Yes.
of the situation you're in. Because, like, the training on the site is as minimal as get comfortable talking about yourself so that you have this confidence. So it's like building that confidence to all the way to like you're walking down the street and someone attacks you to just like,
Yeah.
hey, you're kind of in my space. And how can I manage that? Because that's a thing, especially almost always for women, but where it's someone's either in my space or like, you're at the bar and somebody's trying to talk to you or whatever. And it's like, there's those jokes about like, oh, I have a boyfriend or, and it's like, you don't want to say those things right away. But I've definitely been in those moments where you're like, I don't know how to handle not wanting this person near me because I don't know how they're going to react to that. So you have to,
you have to gauge your
you have to kind of play nice and go, oh, okay, great. Okay.
Oh, you don't have to be nice.
Well, you don't have to be nice, but you just kind of
evaluate
you can't
situation.
just be like F off and then,
I do, but
chase you down the alleyway. Like it's just, there's a lot to manage. So I really appreciate that they have such an array of options of
I also
how to
like
build
the
that.
confidence part of it
Yeah.
too, because I don't feel like this is talked a lot about, but I mean, a lot of times people seek out victims who are more shy,
Right.
less confident, easier to manipulate because they don't have that, not necessarily inner strength, but they're just like more meek. And gaining that confidence,
Right.
that's a small step in the right direction, I
Right.
think.
And yeah,
Love yourself.
And it doesn't matter body or any, it's like Mia was badass, but yeah, he probably went, oh, look, there's a really skinny
Oh,
girl
yeah, absolutely.
with headphones. And it's like
her situation was, I mean, perfect for this murderer. But yeah, that's a one-off though too.
Yeah.
It's like, I have a friend who recently started running at night, and I'm like, please tell me you don't wear your headphones in both ears,
Right.
because that's just very scary living in the
Right.
city. There are bad people
Right.
sometimes.
And that doesn't make it not like, oh, and that's going to be your fault because you had your
No,
headphones on. But
but
it's like, don't
make your situation even harder.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you're not allowed to go.
Oh,
That
right.
sucks. You should be allowed to do that. But
Right.
the
But you
world
have to
we
think
live
about it.
in, you have to protect yourself sometimes.
You have to think, okay, what does this look
And
like?
maybe
What does
that
this
means
look like?
running without your favorite jams all the time.
Or like, okay, first off, I would, if I had to run and it wasn't to music, I would just run off a cliff.
I know that, but it scares me. Like someone
I would just keep
alone
running.
at night, running, especially because we know these stories. We read these
Exactly.
stories over and over, and you got to learn from them too.
But yeah, no, I mean, like you're saying about the confidence, I say that all the time at work. Confidence is more important than competence. Because if you believe you can do it and you know what you're doing, even if you have to fake it to be like, I can do this, the ability to do it will come naturally. So same with the self-defense of like, that sounds really big and scary and I'm not a physical person or I don't do altercations, like that kind of thing. But you play it out in your mind. How do I get through this? And you build that idea and then you do these exercises and be like, oh, I got comfortable screaming. Like there's one where you practice yelling. Because you don't really yell that often.
Don't play a victim before even being a victim too.
Right.
Like
give yourself that power.
If I am a big bad murderer and I see two women and one is clearly quiet and keeps her head down, and it's like, who am I likely to go after? Somebody who's like,
it's like a lion with gazelles.
Sure, yeah.
Unfortunately, that.
And obviously,
predator and prey, like,
and
that's
it's not always the
for.
same. Every situation's different.
Right.
Every person is different. But I mean, you got to do what you can to evaluate your situation.
Yeah. So, speaking of doing anything you can, go to teachhomealive.org and teach yourself stuff. Have some girlfriends over for, put on some true crime and drink wine and do all those things that basic girls do now.
Also, check out
pull up these classes.
Check out this Cuban history. This stuff is crazy.
Yeah, I guess I'll be. Man, I thought I did some thorough research. Leave it to M.I.A. to.
It wasn't me. It was them.
One up.
They clearly know a lot about this information.
Well, yeah, I know. So. All right. Goodbye.
Bye.
Doing a test for her advice podcast.
Oh, fun.
Plugged those in, didn't work. Well, they work, but it does. Zzz. Yeah, it's like.
They worked last time.
Yeah.
Could
Oh,
you
really?
please
Okay, let me
elaborate?
try.
Because these are the only kind that don't hurt my head.
Oh.
La la.
Sound bad? Yeah.
Sorry.
That sounded very put on. Everybody
I
look!
couldn't-
Everybody look at me.
I couldn't like shift that a gear.
Oh, I missed him.
Oh, God.
I mean, we still see that happen sometimes.
Yeah, like that NPR guy.
what?
There was this was a couple years ago. He hosted one of the like traveling radio shows.
Ooh.
And it turned out like something happened that it all came out that he had like 5 families or something. Like
That's
He's
a lot of
living
families.
his dream.
like all
YOLO.
these stops along the way, and he's like, and this is my Minnesota family. I'll have some kids and a wife there. And
I
I'll have
kind of
this."
like it. I have to be honest. Like I bet you never get divorced because you're never with them long enough to get sick of them.
Oh my God,
That's my kind of situation.
that's true. You need a traveling radio
That
man.
would be cool. Oh, wait.
Or
Oh,
I could be the
she wants
traveling.
to be.
I'll be the traveling radio lady.
Yeah, you should be
Oh,
out there
wh-
having 5 husbands.
Yeah, that
or
sounds,
wives.
that sounds good.
When we're
No.
touring,
Yeah, I can
Good luck
start
with that.
I can
Oh, that'd
start
be
the
so
stream.
cool. What a fun thing to observe.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
want to be involved.
I don't
at
wanna
all.
be
I will
near
not hold
it.
a baby. I won't do any of it.
okay, we'll build
What you
rapport.
do this week?
It's like, oh yeah, what'd you? Oh, I spent all day Saturday getting rid of my cats, and I was like,
Excuse me?
what? And she's like, I had to pack up their litter boxes and their toys and their cat tree and da 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 da. It took all day. I'm like, first off, what?
Cat tree.
All day, 5 items. Oh man, I'm like not surprised. It
They're
takes you all day.
They're
to
like
do.
mountain lions.
And like,
What's she like? Describe her.
Yeah, describe her, and we won't
Tell
put
me,
it on the
paint a
podcast.
picture.
she's like
Paint a picture.
my height,
Gross.
maybe an inch.
Oh.
You can air that part.
Because mine is like very hardy, and I'm like, why do y'all think I
Okay,
chopped my hair off?
braggy.
I do.
You do
I
have
feel
thick hair.
I have thick, hardy hair.
Wait
so
till you
I
see
get
your
like
pubes.
So that's definitely going to happen at some point. All right.
Pube party.
if you can make your way through
It's
it.
horror movies with pubes on the side.
Pew party on the side.
We're gonna air,
like a
we're gonna
charcuterie.
we're gonna sun our perineums while we
Oh yeah,
watch
that's a
horror.
thing. People are tanning their taints.
Really?
tan your taint party.
to make it
I don't know, to get
Sturdy?
skin cancer. I think.
No, apparently 30 seconds of taint in the sun is supposed to be as much as drinking coffee. That's one thing I just loved about her.
Yeah.
She did not give a shit. Anyone could see her naked.
That's
Anyone.
great. You still hang out with her?
No, I mean we're
She
acquaintances.
lives-
She
Oh.
moved to San Diego.
Yeah.
Oh, bummer. Well, if we ever go to San Diego,
I'll call her up.
I just want to see her naked.
My
I'm so excited.
my team tells me my voice is like better because I do morning announcements every day.
I like your voice a lot.
Good morning.
I really like it when you're sick.
Me too. In about 5 minutes, we'll be letting our kids in. Have a great Friday. And please remember to lock and close every fucking door. I don't say that part.
Whoa, what you just put in your mouth?
You want that?
Hey, want a hump? Those are good.
Yeah. I
It's a
haven't had one yet.
CBD gummy.
Yeah, 20 milligrams.
Oh my
CBD
God,
gummy.
they are?
20, yeah.
He said CBD, and you're like, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
you just you chomped that down. What if
Oh.
he's like? What if he was like, and it's 40% THC?
Yeah, no, I
You'd
would've-
be-
just eat
you'd be fucked.
It's good
Ooh,
to
I'm
know.
gonna feel good at the Girl Scout overnight.
are.
Withdrawal.
I think
Yesterday,
that
I was
would-
thirsty, and I was like, oh, I don't know when I drank water last. It'd been probably a day or two.
Are you serious? What did you drink? What else have you drank? What else did you drink in that time?
First off,
That's
calm
crazy.
down.
Have a gummy.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I need a quenched mouth all the time.
Yeah.
Quenched mouth.
I'll do it after this.
You can do it now. I don't
What
care.
a dream job.
I'm starting to feel real good.
You're supposed to. They are unlikable characters that you love.
I see.
That's
I
the
see.
porpoise.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. From her groundbreaking music to the groundbreak.
Zapata. Whew. I love the Olive Garden.
Yeah, you do.
They have
would be the words I would use.
nothing on that place down by the water that I like. What's that called? What's that called?
Beaches?
Spaghetti Factory.
Oh, sure.
That sourdough bread, I'd marry it.
Oh, yeah.
There's
good.
nothing else to say. I'm gonna say what I was thinking.
Ooh, let's
Do
hear
it.
it.
If you were a guy, you'd fuck it. Yeah.
Warm with that whipped butter.
Ooh.
Boy.
That's a good idea to just like hollow out a baguette.
That's a good idea.
If we're someone that wanted to do something like that. I do not.
Hey, Robin, on the grocery list,
can you get like
just
several,
add, like a warm baguette?
like several baguettes? Yeah, go
You
to
can just-
Safeway at 4 p.m. or whenever the fresh ones come out, and get back here.
True love.
These are my fucking breads, and those are the eating breads. Don't put them. What were your munchies last night?
I want a big goal.
Not a Swiss cake roll, but a Little Debbie fudge cake.
Mm-hmm.
A pudding. But while I was getting the pudding, I was like, oh, shit, I got some peanut butter. Peanut butter and pudding would be really good. So I took like a spoonful
Oh
of
my
peanut
God, I
butter.
do that with whipped cream. A little bit of peanut butter, a little bit of whipped cream.
And then I put chocolate chips in my pudding. And then I took the peanut butter
Ooh.
spoon and put it in the pudding with the chocolate
Girl,
chips.
you're making
Wow.
yourself a dessert buffet.
That's great.
Yeah, and then I had the cake, and then I found some old Lay's potato chips. It is believed that her family was actually related to Emiliano.
Emiliano?
It is believed that her family is related to Emiliano. It is believed that her family was actually related to Emiliano Zapata.
Emiliano.
It is believed that her family was actually related to Emiliano Zapata. No?
I got bit by a squirrel at Crater Lake, and now I'm dying of bubonic plague because they're carriers. Don't feed them.
Did you
I
get bit
do
by a
feed them, and they climb on me, and I feed them. Yes, I have photos of it. Are you okay?
I'm apologize.
I apologize.
Synonyms are my thing.
Oh boy.
Cinnamons.
Cinnamons are my...
Riding the wave of popularity, their
Words.
And what are you eating? What are you eating?
A donut, but I was back. Go on. I'm sorry.
A little drunk and a lot of noise. Fuck. A little drunk and a lot annoyed. She couldn't find. Fuck me. Therefore, his DNA was on file. It was a match.
Good stuff in there that you're going to have to look.
This bitch twaddling on. Thanks for the compliments. Shut up.
Have you guys seen Scarface?
No.
Oh, really? That makes sense. I mean, it's like a boy movie, I think.
Wow.
I mean,
I love Con Air.
I'm sorry.
With these genders.
Do you like Scarface?
I've never seen
Oh my God. Okay, I'm glad I was recording this. Thank you. And I was being, I guess, sexist, but I mean,
But you weren't wrong.
all right. Can you hear it?
Hello?
Hi there. Can you hear us?
Can you hear
I
me?
sure can. You sound great.
Did you watch the Forensic Files episode?
No, I didn't know there was one.
There is indeed.
It's one of the
Oh.
most aired Forensic Files
Is it?
episodes.
Is
I
that
mean-
a statistic?
Really?
In Joshua McCullough's life,
Oh,
it sure is.
yeah.
It's on all the time.
My mom would talk about that all the time, like
How
in
dare
her
you.
little town growing up, that you would literally like pick up the phone and other people would be talking.
For sex?
And you'd be like, oh, hey, who's talking? What's up?
Yeah.
And that's how you hooked up.
Your mom was a freak.
Yeah, pretty much.
But before we go, I just can we call ourselves the Tour of Italy
Oh, why?
because we're an unstoppable trio.
Oh, the three of us?
Mm-hmm.
You
The
mean for
trio
our
of
podcast?
Italy?
Or just in general?
In general,
And what is it again?
the Tour of Italy.
Oh, yeah, let's call it. Yeah, we're the tour
the
of Italy.
fettuccine, the
I mean,
Chick-
What does
chicken
that have to do
parm.
with anything?
she's,
and
she's had it.
it's an unstoppable trio. The Tour of Italy is
Don't
an
you-
unstoppable trio.
Don't you get it?
Oh, shit, okay. No, I don't, but it's cool.
Well, what about
I'm
Emily?
not mad about it.
Is she the breadsticks?
We won't tell her.
Yeah.
Murder in the Rain is produced and edited by Josh McCullough. Written and hosted by Emily Rowney and Alisha Holland. Artwork by Jamie Costa. Music by Kai Pfeiffer at kyfifer.com. Check out our website, murderintherain.com, for additional information on all cases, a fun interactive map, and be sure to subscribe so you can receive our newsletter. Check out the Mad Props page for coupon codes from some of our sponsors. We love your reviews and seeing them on all streaming platforms, especially iTunes. And check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And suck my balls.
Please put that in.